Welcome to today's webinar, How to Secure Your Legacy Oracle Workloads on AWS. I'm your hostess, Carla Roddy, Director of Marketing at Apps Associates. I am fortunate to be joined today by a panel of experts. Mark Roy, Solution Architect from AWS, Maria Stratas, Senior Solution Engineer from AlertLogic, and Wilfredo Solano, who is our Director of Cloud Services at Apps Associates and has been directly involved in many Oracle application workload migrations to AWS and the ongoing management of those environments. Thanks to all for joining us today. Today's session will introduce security as an important consideration when migrating your Oracle applications to Amazon Web Services. What we are seeing is that as more organizations migrate their legacy applications to AWS, it is the applications, not the infrastructure, that represents the primary threat vehicle for attack. With Apps Associates, you can maximize scalability and agility using your Oracle applications and AWS while ensuring best-in-class security services for your entire cloud stack. Security and compliance are challenging. Expertise is hard to hire, and threats continue to increase. The average cost of a single attack is $5 million, with $1.25 million attributed to system downtime and $1.5 million to IT and end-user productivity loss. You don't want to risk not being protected. This is why Apps Associates has partnered with AWS and AlertLogic. Apps Associates is your one-stop partner to migrate your Oracle stack to the cloud safely and securely. If your organization does not have security staff and is concerned about if you have the proper protection, then you will find this session very relevant for you. Our goal today is to give you an overview of the security landscape and a better understanding of how to ensure your Oracle applications are secure in the cloud. Many of you have joined us for our webinar series covering Oracle on AWS. This is the fourth and final session in this series. The full series will be available on demand after today's webinar. In terms of logistics, I ask for you to remain on mute to minimize background noise. However, if you have a question, then please feel free to enter it into chat and direct it towards the host. We will be monitoring chat, collecting questions, and answering a number of them at the end of today's session. You will also receive a link to today's webinar and copies of the presentation. Finally, I will end the introduction by providing a brief background of Apps Associates so you have an appreciation and context for our role working alongside AWS and AlertLogic. Apps Associates was founded and remains an organization that helps our customers plan, implement, and manage their Oracle applications and related technologies, including cross-platform and hybrid integration, analytics, and infrastructure. We support up and down the complete stack from the infrastructure to the application layer, whether on-premise or in cloud. Today, our focus is on guiding and working with our customers move to the cloud in all of the various forms, including migration of their Oracle workloads to AWS or to hybrid environments. We announced our strategic collaboration agreement with AWS at reInvent in November 2018. Apps Associates is recognized for our Oracle competency and leadership, understanding how to plan, migrate, and deploy within AWS, as well as deliver cloud-managed services with extensive experience over the last 6 years in this area of specialization. We have just signed a partnership agreement with AlertLogic to embed their seamless threat protection into our service offering. It is a powerful combination not found elsewhere. With that backdrop, let me bring in Mark Roy to kick off our session today with context of how security is supported within AWS.
Thanks, Carla. My name is Mark Roy, and I'm a solutions architect with AWS. It's great to be here to talk to you today about a key topic for every customer. Before joining AWS, I spent about 20 years delivering enterprise financial services applications, so I know firsthand how companies demand secure solutions. And this is really true across all industries, and it starts with secure data, which is really the focus of today's discussion. So I'll spend the next 10 minutes setting some context for you about AWS security, and then I'll turn it over to Maria from AlertLogic and Wilfredo from Apps Associates to talk about how to secure enterprise Oracle workloads on AWS. So let me start by talking about why is security traditionally so difficult? So it's come a long way and it continues to evolve, but traditionally CIOs and CISOs have poor visibility to their infrastructure and their workloads. They have to invest countless time and money to keep their data and their applications secure, and they end up with very little automation. Meanwhile, compliance standards and regulations continue to get more stringent, and data volumes keep growing and becoming more business critical. Next slide. So companies have been forced to choose. Do you want to be fast and nimble and agile, or do you want to be secure? Next. And with AWS, you can now do both. So you get all the agility benefits of the cloud while still getting much stronger security. Next slide. So in the early days of cloud computing, many companies were taking a wait-and-see approach. They wanted to make sure their data was going to be safe. And now we're finding as many organizations actually prefer AWS security over what they could deliver on their own. So if you look at FINRA and Slack, for example, the quotes here on the slide, they've both said that AWS security is better than what they could deliver on premises. Another quote here from DNA Nexus, their CEO, Richard Daly. He found that AWS let them scale their genome analysis well beyond what they could do on premises and still be able to do it in a secure and compliant fashion in the cloud. So let's take a look at a few of the ways that AWS makes this happen. Next slide. So first, security at AWS is our top priority. You've probably heard that if you've been to any discussion about AWS. We listen closely to the customers, and to offer both a secure cloud computing environment and innovative services that satisfy the security and compliance needs of the most risk-sensitive organizations. We protect millions of active customers worldwide. Our customers cross industries with a wide range of use cases, anything from large enterprises and startups, educational institutions, and even government organizations. And if you look at the scale and the global reach of these customers, it gives us really broad visibility and deep insights about cloud security. And we used all that we learned there from our customers to reinvest in the infrastructure and in services that help you meet your unique security and regulatory needs. So security starts, with our core infrastructure. It's custom built for the cloud, designed to meet the most stringent security requirements in the world. And we monitor that infrastructure 24/7 to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your data. And you can imagine that our scale also attracts the leading security partners, companies like AlertLogic and like Apps Associates. And they provide value-added tools and services on top of our platform, giving you the best possible solutions. The bottom line is that you can use AWS to transform your business. You can automate security and compliance tasks to reduce risk, which really frees up resources so you can grow and innovate faster. So as an AWS customer, what I found most interesting is that from the smallest startup, with 5 or 10 people in it, up to billion-dollar enterprises, all of those customers inherit the full benefits of all the experience that we've achieved, and it's all tested against the strictest third-party compliance frameworks. Let's take a deeper look. Next slide. So I'm not going to go through every one of these, but you can see that AWS regularly achieves third-party validations for thousands of global compliance requirements. And we continually monitor that to help you meet standards for finance, retail, healthcare, government, and more. So you inherit the latest security controls operated by AWS, strengthening your own security programs while also getting tools to simplify your efforts. We support more security standards and compliance certifications than any other offering, including PCI DSS, HIPAA, FedRAMP, SEC Rule 17a-4, and FISMA, to name a few. And we help you satisfy compliance requirements of virtually every regulatory agency around the globe. So I think we've got you covered, although we're always listening to hear more. Next slide. Another really important thing to note is that with AWS, you control where your data is stored, who can access it, and what resources your organization is consuming at any given moment. So we've got fine-grained identity and access controls combined with continuous monitoring for real-time security information. And that lets you ensure the right resources have the right access at all times, wherever you decide to store your data. And you can reduce risk as you scale by using security automation and activity monitoring services that we'll talk more about to detect suspicious events like configuration changes across your global ecosystem. You can even integrate our services with any existing workflows that you have and streamline your operations and simplify compliance reporting. Next slide. AWS is vigilant about your privacy. So with AWS, you can build on the most secure global infrastructure knowing you always own your data, including the ability to encrypt it, to move it, and manage retention. So if you look at the design of our global infrastructure, it lets you retain complete control over the regions where you store your data physically, and that can help you meet data residency requirements depending on which countries you're working in. And we provide tools to let you easily encrypt your data in transit and at rest to help ensure that only authorized users can access it. You can use keys managed by our AWS key management system, or you can manage your own encryption keys with a cloud HSM. We also give you the control and visibility you need to help demonstrate that you comply with regional and local data privacy laws and regulations. Next slide, we'll talk a little bit about automation. Automating security tasks in AWS lets you be more secure. You take away the possibility of human configuration errors, and you give your team more time to focus on other work critical to your business. So we give you automation tools that make it easier for your team to work closely with developers and operations folks to create and deploy faster and more securely. For example, employing technologies like machine learning, AWS lets you automatically and continuously discover, classify, and protect sensitive data in AWS with just a few clicks in the console. You can automate infrastructure and application security checks to continually enforce security and compliance controls and to help ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability at all times. Automation helps you reduce the noise and manual work so you can focus your expertise where it really matters. Here's an example that we're showing. Amazon GuardDuty detects a compromised EC2 instance that's trying to communicate with an IP address tied to a DDoS malware. Amazon CloudWatch is watching for these findings, and it sees that alert, and it triggers a Lambda function when it sees that threat. You could even use instance tagging to check to see, hey, is this instance running critical production services or some development workload, and vary the response accordingly. In this particular case, the Lambda function removes the instance from its security group and adds it into one that blocks all ingress and egress. It takes a snapshot of the EBS volumes and alerts your security team so you've automatically detected and responded to the threat immediately. So last slide for me, if you could go. Okay, so I'll wrap up just highlighting some of the core security capabilities that are aligned to our cloud adoption framework. We really cover a wide range of identity needs. We've got extensive logging and audit controls for you. AWS gives you tools to secure your infrastructure like firewalls and virtual private clouds. You also get data protection capabilities like key management. And Amazon Macie, which is a machine learning powered way to discover, classify, and protect your S3 data. Lastly, we have ways to automate security incident response, including Lambda functions and config rules. In addition, you can leverage our partners with deep expertise and proven success securing every stage of cloud adoption, anything from initial migration through ongoing day-to-day management, including business-critical Oracle workloads that we'll talk about in the rest of today's webinar. Now I'll hand it over to Maria to tell you how AlertLogic builds on this platform.
All right, thank you, Mark. Hello, everybody. My name is Maria. I work for AlertLogic and got a background that goes through software and hardware over the past years, but throughout all of my little technical journey there, security has always played a really big role. So I ended up ultimately here at AlertLogic working directly with security, which I find fascinating. I also become something of an evangelist about it because I think it's very important, you know, on so many different levels, as I'm sure everybody on this call knows, since you can't really, you know, turn on the television news without seeing whatever the latest breach might be. So Marriott, you know, thank you, making my job easier. Next slide, please, Carla. Thank you. So I wanted to introduce to everybody here a little bit about AlertLogic so you can kind of know who we are. I know sometimes we have kind of flown a little bit under the radar, especially when it comes to some of the, you know, Forrester, Gartner, those guys, the kind of neutral parties out there who evaluate all these different technologies. The problem they have had with AlertLogic is figuring out what category to put us in. So I'm very happy to say that as of, you know, Q3 of this year, they actually have been able to kind of figure that out to some extent. And as you can see from the chart here on the left, we're right there in that leaders area, probably with a bunch of names that are very familiar. So, you know, kind of to give everybody an idea of who AlertLogic are, how we kind of fit into the industry, we're actually, you know, a market leader in this security world. So next slide, please, Carla. All right. So when AlertLogic talks about why we do what we do and how we really fit in, you know, with our customer base, it's these three different areas you see up here that really lead people to us and where we can really help out. You know, there are a lot of, I should say, security tools that are out there. They can be a little bit cumbersome to maintain. There's not just the maintenance of the, you know, device or tool itself, but then how do you make sure it's got updated content? How do you make sure if there's any other change to your network or infrastructure that that tool isn't affected as well? Of course, human expertise. There's quite a dearth of people right now in just IT in general, and in security it's doubly, if not quadruply so. So always kind of hard to find those people. And then, you know, I had mentioned, you know, with the tools that threat intelligence, you know, how do you know what an attack is? How do we know that we've got the right data to find an attack? You know, how do you make sure that, hey, you know, I'm seeing this. Is this actually something that, you know, is an attack? Is this, you know, simply normal traffic that just looks a little different? How do you make sure that all of that different security content that you've got stays fresh? Because the attackers, they do like to modify things. The next slide, please, Carla. Thank you. So this is what we do. So AlertLogic is security as a service. And kind of just reading across the top there, if you made that into a single sentence, you know, without the little pipe bars in between, you would really have a very strong statement about what we do. We're going to provide security to you. We're going to provide it to you across a variety of different environments. We have a single pane of glass user interface for those that would like to or need to access that user interface. We're protecting applications and infrastructure, and we're doing this with over a variety of different layers within the environment. So we're assessing things, we're doing vulnerability scans, we're figuring out what's out there in network traffic, detecting those indicators of compromise, we're alerting on those indicators of compromise. We do have solutions that block as well, and ultimately, you know, Mark had mentioned it there, all those compliances, those are just becoming more numerous and more, you know, kind of further reaching, like kind of an octopus effect going on there. So we also help with compliance, and that's a big thing that we do is making all of this data visible and making it on hand so that when auditors come calling, it's very easy to hand over and say, hey, here's what we're doing, here's what we've got, this is how our security solution works. Next slide, please, Carla. Thank you. So yes, the ubiquitous NASCAR slide. The reason that I, especially as an engineer, find this to be an interesting slide, it's not kind of a sales bragging slide. To me, it's much more about pointing out the vast array of industries that we operate in, and actually the vast number of customers. We have well over 4,000, I think it's actually closer to 5,000 now, customers. And all of these different industries are going to attract different types of attacks, but we protect them all. And what's interesting about that for any customer is the fact that, hey, right now attackers might be doing a concerted effort, going after hotels. So that was certainly, it's kind of like a trend, what are all the attackers doing today? Kind of like what are the kids on the playground doing? So attackers had a big push a few years ago for going after hotels. If you look at the current Marriott breach, you'll notice that some of the breaching actually happened back during that big push. But the interesting thing to everybody, let's say, to Chuck E. Cheese's in retail e-commerce or, any of the nonprofits, is that as these attacks happen, we at Alert Logic build up that security content. So now Chuck E. Cheese is going to have the exact same protection as Harvard and vice versa. So when attacks are going after the retail world, now Harvard has that protection. So it's a really nice cross-pollination of that security content to make sure that when those attackers eventually kind of, move on from hotels and, focus their resources or focus their little tunnel vision there on retail, Chuck E. Cheese already has a lot of protection based on the attacks that they used against hotels. Because I will say, while attacks are always changing and altering slightly, this, that, and the other, there's a really good saying out there, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So the number one attack vector that people use to this day is actually SQL injection, which is an attack vector from 1998, so we're talking about 20 years old. Now, they alter it as they go, of course, so that's why you want to keep that threat content fresh. But at the same token, it is still SQL-I. It's something that we've seen, probably billions at this time, billions and billions of times, and so we're able to recognize that and apply that protection across all these different industries and across all of our customers. Next slide, please, Carla. This is just a quick, kind of insight here into, what Alert Logic does when we're providing security for our customers. So, if you remember that earlier slide where it said the reason that we're, kind of in business, as it were, is because of the, the difficulty of hiring that staff, of maintaining those security tools, of getting those security tools deployed, and then in addition, that threat intelligence and that security content, keeping that fresh. So using Alert Logic, because we are security as a service, we are very able to do essentially kind of a plug and play. It's a very easy deployment. It's one that is very handheld, and we make sure that our customers are able to see value as quickly as we possibly can. So next slide, please, Carla. This is the cloud shared responsibility model, and this is absolutely vital for anybody who is moving to the cloud to understand and to really, digest and have an idea of what this will mean for your environment, and for not just your environment, meaning the infrastructure, the servers, but also for the processes that you use to run those servers, to run that infrastructure. So what we have here, if you kind of look on the bottom left, this is where you have got what AWS is doing. So you can see there that they're really hardened on that foundation services. They have got that storage, it's in, it's locked, they know what they're doing. It is amazing what they actually can do with storage. The networks, the hosts, all of that is something that, to some extent or another, the cloud provider has locked down. That's fantastic. It is absolutely a great way to run your environment, because when you do this yourself, you're not operating on the same economies of scale that a cloud can. So their being able to lock it down is fantastic. Now, if you kind of look, it's kind of a stair formation there. You'll see that there's these black areas that have some orange areas within them. Now, those black areas, and unfortunately it's gray and black there, so hopefully everybody's monitors are showing the colors correctly there. But gray is that hardened AWS area. The black with the orange, that's what still remains to be done. Now, the orange, those are areas that Alert Logic covers. The areas that are still in black are things that no matter what, the customer still has to do. And when you look at them, it makes sense. If you look kind of at the top bar in the middle there, the first bullet says access management. Obviously, that is something that your business and you as these consumers, you're going to decide, well, who's accessing what permissions do they have, what are they going to do with it? That's something that no matter what would really need to remain in your business. But when you look just a little bit below that, to that middle, that orange box right below there, you'll see things like log analysis. Well, that's tough. Log analysis is not easy. There is a lot of data in logs, and understanding what is good and what is hinky or weird or should be investigated, and then what is actually outright bad, that's really tough, especially when you're talking about logs at scale. And if you think just kind of individually here, everybody on this call, well, how many servers have you got, and what are those logs that you're looking at? And then there's the application logs on top of that. And, even if you just have a single one server, that's a lot of log data. Now, think about doing that across, multiple customers, and you begin to see that this is something that really needs some kind of tool that needs, using all of the technology we have today, including, what Mark had kind of mentioned there, some machine learning to figure out what's going on and really be able to sift through that as intelligently as possible. All right, next slide, please, Carlos. So the application stack is a very complex beast, and it is due to this complexity that we've seen a lot of attacks, a lot of the successful attacks, I should say, in the last X number of years, I would call it. So there are definitely vulnerabilities that come in through configurations, how you configure, your OS, do you leave ports open, all that kind of good stuff. But there are also vulnerabilities that come in your code, and a lot of those are going to be inherited. If you think about development today, even if it's development on top of an application stack, most developers are not writing from scratch. They're using libraries, they're having, free source or open source different packets of code, and all of that is getting, kind of put together into this package that helps to run your business. And if you actually kind of take a look there up at that app framework, which is the second one down in the blue, you'll see right there is WordPress. And WordPress is actually how the hackers were able to get into Yahoo before they were, basically revealed every single user in Yahoo, over 3 billion user accounts. It was from a WordPress vulnerability that was 3 years old. It was a 2011 vulnerability, and in 2014, that vulnerability was still there in Yahoo, and they were able to break in and access all of those accounts. If you look here, another favorite one, in the middleware, which is the bottom row there in the blue section, you'll see that first little feather there for Apache. I'm sure everybody here is very familiar with Equifax. And if you think about Equifax, I'm not sure how familiar you are, but the Apache Struts vulnerability that actually hit this, the latest and greatest, or I should say the very large, the biggest Equifax breach was based on an Apache Struts vulnerability, and it had been out for 67 days before Equifax was actually hit. So there was over 2 months in which they had the chance to find that vulnerability and figure out what to do about it. So there's a lot of complexities in there. Figuring out what is actually in this application goes far beyond, I do Patch Tuesday with, Microsoft or whatever the case might be. So next slide, please, Carla. What I have on the next slide is kind of in that blue area. We talk about what Alert Logic does to help find those vulnerabilities. It's more than just, kind of knowing a signature. You have to actually know the mechanics behind finding those signatures. And you have to figure out, okay, what are we going to see here? Where is this going to be? How are we going to handle this? Actually, we'll just skip the next slide. So this slide is absolutely an eye chart. Please don't try to memorize it. It will just hurt. But the point I want to make here is that what Alert Logic does when we're working with compliance is very closely figure out how does what we have map to what you need and what requirements you have. And so we've gone through, these are just, just a small handful, but they're kind of, I would call them the most common ones. So you can kind of have an idea that a lot of what we do maps and kind of checks off all those different requirements that exist for compliance. So next slide, please. And last but not least, especially for anybody who is kind of technically minded here, I just wanted to touch on this. This is actually how we deploy. So if you see those little orange shields that are sitting on the servers, kind of on the web server tier there and the app server tier, those are agents that we deploy on servers. And those agents act as a universal agent. They're very small. They don't actually interfere with the performance of the server. And they will forward or mirror the network traffic to that appliance that you kind of see there on the upper and lower kind of left-ish side of the screen. That network traffic is then encrypted and compressed, sent back to AlertLogic, and that's where we're really applying that full security content. And we're ultimately, what to me is the most vital portion of what we do, we're going to escalate that, any kind of indicator of compromise that we see correlated into an incident and escalate that up to you or to whomever you designate. And that escalation, that time when we pick up the phone and call, or when we have the SOC available for you to call in, if you have an incident that, we had kind of graded as a little bit lower, that is the biggest step forward in having good security, because that's where you have that visibility. That's where you know what's going on. That's where somebody's translating, hey, all of these data packets that are flowing right now, this is what we're actually seeing, and this is what it means. In addition, we provide a recommended remediation. So we say, hey, here's what we recommend you do about it. And we also provide the evidence as well. So all of the network packets that are related to a single attack, they're attached as evidence to that incident. If it is something that is found in log data, those log messages are also attached as well. And I should note that those little shields, those universal agents, they also operate for log data, at which point we simply ingest a copy of the log data, and then not only do we search it for security, but we also make that available for search through our UI. That was an extremely condensed version, which I'm always happy to dive into a bit more if anybody's interested. But just to give an idea for those who might be kind of wondering, well, how do you actually do this from a technical perspective? This is what it looks like. So thank you very much, everybody. And at this point, I will hand over to Wilfredo, who will take us through a little bit more with Apps Associates.
Excellent. Thank you, Maria. So my name is Wilfredo Solano. I'm a Director for Cloud Services for Apps Associates. And I will follow up on the shared responsibility model that we've seen before. So this is very important. This is something that we as companies need really to embrace with AWS because as you could see in the previous slides from AlertLogic, there are multiple areas that are not covered out of the box. And I believe that this is where Apps Associates can be the right partner for you. And so I recently attended a CIO forum, and one question that came up was very interesting, and it was just what keeps you awake at night. And this was posted to the CIOs and CTOs that were on the meeting. And by far the first answer that came to their minds was security, and in this case, cybersecurity. Right? So we have embraced this model, and I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that we've done for this. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. So this is an overview of Apps Associates Managed Services. And what we've done is that we have been in the market for many years, and you heard about that from Carla. Initially, founded in 2002, we have been dealing with Oracle workloads since then, and especially with AWS, we have been working with them very closely since 2012, which is 6 years out of the 10 years existence of AWS. And what we have come up is with a layered approach of managed services, and we have embedded our processes and procedures and obviously some best practices, right? So within these services, you will find things like intrusion detection, for example, right? Which is an enterprise feature that people will look for. for example, forensics, or the ability for you to be able to go back and get reports and get all the evidence necessary for a SOX compliance report in this case, right? And lately, with the European Union and the GDPR requirements. But one of the things that sticks out always is that we have to be proactive in terms of security. I think that's coming out clear from the previous presenters as well, right? You have to be proactive. You have to be on the lookout. You have to be always getting into the processes. And in our case, we also will help you in those areas with things like patching, proactive patching, and some other things, right? The entire idea is that at the end of the day, we are in this together, and we will be also responsible in that responsibility model that you have, right? We can move to the next one. Okay. Since the series of webinars has been around the Oracle workloads, I just wanted to focus a little bit back on Oracle and Oracle workloads. So, and as a matter of just an image to convey the message, we have this one that is just a typical infrastructure topology included disaster recovery. And as you can see in this one, which is a very simple, this will be like the first draft of this architecture or topology. You have a lot of entry points. You have a lot of things that you need to secure, right? You have things that are on the primary data center, which is on your left on the screen, right? And you have other things that you need to protect also that are on the disaster recovery side, right? If you are an Oracle customer with internet exposed applications like some of the I modules or self-service modules that were called before, then the entire public subnet also comes into the picture, right? And you need to be able to have all those areas covered. And the intention of our services is provide that peace of mind, so that you understand that those areas are covered and that we are using the best practices. We are building on top of Alert Logic and AWS features, and providing with solutions for the extra squares, black squares that you saw on some of the previous images from Alert Logic. Okay. We can move on to the next one. Okay. I talked about proactive patching. Obviously, this is not the only use case, but it's a very common and it's something that you can really relate as an Oracle customer. So patching happens at Oracle in terms of security related or critical patch updates, which are called CPUs, every 3 months. And this specific screen here is coming from the latest one that we had in October. And you can see there the CVEs, which is the common vulnerabilities and exposures. The reason why I'm pointing to this is because together with our capabilities, our understanding of the Oracle technology and Oracle providing, for example, this type of patching, then we will be able to go back to you and also leverage if you can go to the next slide, also leverage the following information that is also coming from Alert Logic, where you can see the Oracle vulnerability library from them, right? So in this case, apps associates within their managed services will be able to link this together and very quickly assert which patches apply to you and what type of vulnerabilities we should be covering. If it is before even these patches have been published, then we can also look into the vulnerability and see if there is any type of workaround or any other way how we can help you mitigate the risk at that moment. However, as soon as we have a CVE marking, then we will be able to track it back and really make sure that it gets mitigated via proactive patching as well. Right? As you can see on that slide, we also have an Oracle-specific intrusion detection signatures, and we will be also able to do, as I mentioned before, forensics and log mining to help you out with either with root cause analysis, going back to any type of break-in, or for certification purposes. In this case, you want to get your SOC certification or something else. Okay. We can move to the next slide, please. All right. So to sum it up, we are not offering this as one-offs, right? I think it's very important to understand that this is an integrated approach for security. We have also embraced the so-called security as a service type of mentality. And if you are a customer out there and want to move to AWS and have security concerns, then you can look into this as a great help, because our managed services will be covering for everything related to security in conjunction with Alert Logic and AWS. Okay, then that will allow you to focus on your business. We have to take into consideration that you will, sometimes you will require resources and licenses and all that, and with a service like this, then you will not need those type of things. So also there are cost savings, there are material things that you will not have to incur due to this packaging and this integration as a complete service for you. And then last but not least, as I said, Oracle and AWS, right? So Apps Associates, has made a lot of investment, and we have a lot of years of experience on running Oracle workloads, whether e-business suite or some other type of workloads on AWS. And as these webinars can prove, I think we have you covered, right? So we got you covered on those areas. So we had the cost management already, the licensing and support. We talked about hybrid enterprise with rack systems and VMware, for example, right? And now security as a service, as a full package for you to leverage on your journey to the cloud. Thank you. Back to you, Carla.
Okay, thank you, Wilfredo, and thank you to Mark and Maria for joining us today. As we all know, security is a shared responsibility, and through our partnerships with AWS and Alert Logic, our offering helps to defend every layer of your Oracle stack. A reminder that this was the last in our webinar series. We'll send you an email with the links to all of the recordings, as well as a copy of today's presentation. Our goal today was to show you the power of Apps Associates together with AWS and Alert Logic, and how we can provide full stack defense for your mission-critical Oracle applications and data in the cloud. Apps provides an integrated solution that takes the worry out of security and allows you to focus on what is most important to your business. So we're going to go ahead and close this out. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar, and have a great day.